morning. Moving on to the newspaper review, I'm going to be having this section with Dr. Victor. Hi, hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming today. Okay, we'll be starting with the newspaper, moving on to the newspaper review this morning, and we're going to be starting with the Daily Trust newspaper. The big headlines there on the Daily Trust says, Rivers Koi builds mall on Abuja site. Rivers Koi builds mall on Abuja site. Still on the headlines, Taraba government goes spiritual over deputy's illness. You get that on page 11 from the Daily Trust newspaper. Still on the Daily Trust, Tinubu healthy, Soludo. How 71-year-old man died trying to escape tanker explosion. Still on the Daily Trust newspaper. 9 at large after Kefi jailbreak. Bauchi police shut down as students protest over robbery. You get that on page 14. Tambuwal released, EFCC replies Atiku Obi ADC. You get that on page 10 from the Daily Trust newspaper. Still on the papers, how bandits ambushed, killed 10 security operatives in Zamfara State. Tambuwal EFCC hits backs at ADC over unprovoked attack. Still, you get that on page 2 from the Daily Trust newspaper. Illegal 176 estate diaspora depositors demand phone. You get that on page 4 from the Daily Trust newspaper. How non-insurance finance sector can grow by Edun. That on page 8. Still on page 8, national single window to take off in March. You get that on page 8 from our Daily Trust newspaper this beautiful morning. All right, over to you, Dr. Ohai. Let's quickly talk about Amechi, how Fire Me and I begin opposition coalition. Let's talk about that. What do you think about that?
Well, these were colleagues in the APC. Obviously, what they do have in common the agreement with the party and the power that be. And and again, another thing that will make them start a coalition is also their hunger for power. They're no longer in power and they desire to continue in power, and I don't think they see, anything happening in their favor right now with the current administration.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. The big headline on the Daily Trust says, Rivers builds mall on Abuja site. Rivers Company builds mall on Abuja site. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think what is important here is to see what the prime real estate, if I want to play with the word states in this country, to Abuja and Lagos. And so if a Rivers company is putting up, a big mall in Abuja, it's for 2 reasons.
Okay.
They could have done it in Port Harcourt, which is also a place where, but sometimes you look at issues of security, or you look at the bigger picture and say to yourself, where's my market? Where would I make more profit? And the truth is, a lot of people are going to Abuja, and there's a lot of money in Abuja. So that would probably have informed the reason why they set it up there. That is the grace that Lagos has always enjoyed all these years, and I think the new bride is Abuja.
Oh, so that is why they went to set up the mall there.
Yes, very good one.
That's a good one. All right, thank you so much for that. Still moving on the newspaper review this morning, we'll quickly take a look at the Nation newspaper. The big headlines there on the Nation newspaper says, Amechi, how Fire Me and I begged opposition coalition. Still on the newspaper review, Tambuwal EFCC hit back at ADC over unprovoked attack. Still on the headlines from the newspaper, the Nation newspaper. We started in Nasiru Danu House. These claims lack basics, says S-Equity Governor. That is a sub-writer from Amechi, how Fire Me and I begged begin opposition coalition. Still on the newspaper review, How non-interest finance sector can grow by Edom. You get that on page 8. National single window to take off in March. You get that also on page 8. Still on the newspaper review. Why I am supporting Tinubu by Soludo. We still have that on the Nation newspaper. Dispute over property documentation. Daniel gets restraining orders against Ogun government. You get that on page 6. We're still on the Nation newspaper. Okay, Dr. Victor Oha, let's quickly talk about illegal 176 estates diaspora depositors demand reform. What is your take on that?
I'm really worried at what is happening because, we talk about foreign direct investments, but we also talk about diaspora investment.
Yes,
There's
sir.
a lot of people in the diaspora, they can keep their money over there. But, and when they do send money back home here, what you find is a situation where family, friends, relatives will now misuse the money. And so the real estate is one secure way of, if they're coming back and invest in Nigeria as a first step towards coming back home. Or just putting your money where, obviously, yielding dividends for you. Now, with what has happened, I don't know what informed why the government did what it did. But I'm also wondering why the government would sleep on its rights. Why you would wait for 176 estates. Wait for 1, 2, 3. The truth is that the government has its presence every single corner of the state. So why would you wait until that long? Now, what that is going to happen is it's going to further demarket Nigeria as a place for investment by especially the diaspora and especially Lagos State as well. Because that's one of the biggest businesses in Lagos. Lagos State, they don't have oil. Now they do have some oil.
Yes.
But they will argue and say, look, our oil is land. Now, if people are coming to invest, what makes Lagos beautiful? What makes it desirable? It's the real estate.
Investment,
and
yes.
all that. So, if you're asking them to regularize, okay, but if these guys are asking for their money back, I don't blame them. I don't blame them. And I feel that a lot more people, Lagos is not the only place. So Edo has one of the biggest diaspora populations. I would say to people from Edo, go back home and make Edo State what it should be. We are capable, Edo people are capable of making Benin and the rest of Edo State just as beautiful as Lagos is. Every Nigerian is coming to make Lagos beautiful, and now see what they're getting back in return.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Victor Ohai. Moving on, we're still on the newspaper review, TMI, this morning, and we'll be looking at the Punch newspaper. The big headlines on the Punch newspaper says, health sector crisis persists despite 5.4 trillion naira World Bank loans. That is the big headlines on the Punch newspaper this morning. On page 10, you get court orders, federal government to close case in Dansuki's decades oil trial. All right, that is on page 10, still on the headlines from the Punch newspaper. EFCC targeting David Mark after Tambuwal, ADC. You get that on page 2. Still on the Punch newspaper, federal government drops 60 billion naira fraud charged against ex-AMCON MD. You get that on page 10 from the Punch newspaper. On page 29, we have NBA. Others condemns Ibom Air over female passengers assault. You get that on page 29. Still on the Punch newspaper, police probe KWAM 1 over Abuja airport misconduct. You get that on page 2. Still on the newspaper, 30,000 naira car race. Bet leaves 5 dead in Ogun State. You get that on page 4. And also on page 5 from the Punch newspaper. Okay, still on the Punch newspaper this morning says Boko Haram scares, Borno villagers flee, sleep on Cameroon streets, schools. You get that on page 7. And we'll quickly look at the big headlines there. Dr. Ohai that says health sector crisis persists despite 5.4 trillion naira World Bank's loan. What is your take on that?
I'm really worried at what is happening with government, whether at national or subnational level. And I'll tell you what I mean. 5.6 trillion naira. That's a lot of money.
That's a whole lot.
That's a lot of money. There's no way we will not have felt the impact. But what is happening in the health sector is like what's happening everywhere else. Like we hear right now that after the fuel subsidy removal, the states at the subnational level they're receiving so much money now, much more than before. But are people feeling it at the grassroots? The answer is no. Every time politicians are busy ferrying money abroad and just stashing away money, this deserves a probe. Why would we be going abroad with this kind of with this kind of money? Even if it's world-class diagnostic centers, because that's where it starts from diagnosis, we should be able to put at least 6 major world-class diagnostic centers around the country. Cancer, MRI, for early detection of things like cancer and other diseases, and then upgrade our hospitals. So I find this scandalous, and it's coming from a World Bank because obviously you can't hide it. If they're giving you money, they want to see the results. From what I see, that Nigerians are not seeing it. I certainly don't see it. It's scandalous.
Okay, thank you so much. There's this trending story about Comfort, what she did at the plane, Ibom Air, and she harassed her hostesses, and something actually happened, and now they've charged her to court. And KWAM did the same thing, and a lot of persons have been saying, they just gave him 6-month ban, from using the flight, and a lot of persons were saying they were not being, they were not being fair with their judgment between KWAM and Comfort. But now, on the Punch newspaper this morning, it says police probe KWAM over Abuja airport misconduct. You saw what he did. He stood in front of the plane. He didn't want to allow the plane move, and after everything, he came out on the internet to apologize. And a lot of speculations were saying that what the judgment they made between him and Comfort, it's not fair. So what would you have to say about this fact that now we are saying that police has probed him?
I'm glad that Comfort's case, not that I'm happy that it happened, I'm just saying is providence, but that came up to be able to show the double standards that exist in this country. I recall that in the case of spraying money, one person went to jail.
Yes.
Because he probably didn't have as much money as the other person. The story. What's his name now? The one that went to jail.
Bob Risky. And then Cubana chief priest just had a light tap on the wrist. Now they never slept in jail for 1 day. Yes.
So it just tells you the kind of double standards that we have. It's dangerous to either anonymous or the son of a nobody in this country. Now, what is happening with Comfort case? Maybe KWAM happened to save Comfort, or Comfort happened so that it will show what it will show what we are as a people,
in this country.
Yes. Comfort, that's the danger of a one-sided story. Thank God for citizen journalism. People who had their phones, and then we saw all sides of the story.
Happened? Exactly.
And if you don't have the complete picture, you don't know what the story is. It could have been just the story of Ibom Air. But let's see. And if anything happens to her, it will set the precedent, and KWAM cannot escape it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Victor Oha. Our last newspaper review today, we'll be checking the Nigeria Tribune newspaper. On the big headlines there, NBA, Labour Party orders flea treatment of female passenger. That is the big headlines there. A sub-writer said, aviation experts weigh in on unruly behaviors at airport. Another sub-writer said, please receive petition from NCAA on KWAM IGP direct. That is on page 5. Direct airports police to command to begin investigation. You get that on page 5. Still on the Nigerian Tribune newspaper, NSA to unfold fresh strategies to end terrorism. That is on page 3 from the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Tinubu is my friend over 22 years. I have no apologies for supporting him. Soludo. You get that on page 30. Still on the newspaper review, NSC, NAPTIP, MMS move to curb human trafficking through waterways. You get that on page 3 on the Nigerian Tribal newspaper. Still on the newspaper, fast walking key to longevity, cuts mortality risk by 20% study. You get that on page 3. Tambuwal released on bail as EFCC counters ADC PDP. You get that on page 5. Still on the newspaper review. Okay, Dr. Victor Ohai, let's quickly talk briefly on NSC, NAPT. Okay, let's talk about Tinubu is my friend of over 22 years. I have no apologies for supporting him. Soludo. Let's talk about that.
He had to come out now and say so, and also visit the president for a simple reason. Right now, the elections are close, but I think it's in November, and this is going to pose, that election poses an essential threat to his governorship ambition. The president is interested in capturing as many states for his party as possible. And for Soludo, the smartest thing to do right now, if he doesn't want to lose his seat, is to renew his friendship with the president, so that he may be reconsidered. So I think he's going to do some sort of negotiation. Please save me, and I will support you in 2027.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Victor Ohai. That is all we have on the newspaper review this morning. Do well to grab a copy out there. We'll be handing over to our Benin Network studio for the continuation on TMI.